No, just kidding. So yeah, my name is Anthony. I'm a developer evangelist at Twilio. And for those of you who are not familiar with Twilio, you could think of us as like a communication layer on top of the internet. So what that means is like, if you're a company or a developer and you want to add communications into your application, you would definitely like look at Twilio because we've got tons of different communication APIs that are available and are easy for developers to implement. So whether that be SMS or video, voice call, email, WhatsApp, you name it, and we pretty much have it. So yeah, the title for this talk is Gaining Trust in APIs and What You Should Be Looking For. So API security is a huge topic, and I'm not going to be able to cover everything here today because we only have so much time. But yeah, if you want to talk to me after this, I'd love to chat with you and discuss this further. Again, you can reach out to me online. So yeah, not to sound like a broken record or anything, but APIs are really important, and I think by now you probably know that, right? I mean, we're at this international conference that's focused on APIs, so yeah, APIs are a really big deal. Now, APIs continue to grow at an exponential rate. They're growing so quickly. According to Akami, APIs are growing 30% year over year, and by 2024, we're going to reach 42 trillion API hits. So that's a huge number. And then furthermore, Gartner is predicting that by 2025, 30% of all third-party APIs are going to be used in applications. So that is a huge number. Currently, that number is under 10%. So in just a few years, that's going to grow to 30%. So yeah, big numbers, big growth. But with this growth comes a lot of challenges, namely security challenges, because as you grow, you're increasing your attack surface. So for example, let's say you're using an unsecure API. Well, guess what? That is going to increase your risk for attacks, right? And if you're using an API that has an outage, well, guess what? That part of your application is going to go down. And then to add fuel to the fire, Gartner is predicting that APIs are growing so quickly that they're actually outgrowing the number of teams that can support them. So not only are we talking about various security challenges, we're also talking about APIs not even being able to support themselves. So now that we understand how important an API is, how quickly they're growing, and then on the flip side, how vulnerable they can be, so how can you trust one, and why would you trust an API? So before trust, though, comes something that's really important, and that is knowledge, right? Knowledge is power. So it's very, very important to think about, have an inventory of what APIs you're using and really understand what each API is doing. And that sounds really simple, but I feel like a lot of companies and a lot of people are missing out on this simple thing. So trust in an API is kind of like trust in a relationship, right? It's very similar. You don't just go around throwing your trust at every single person that you meet. At least I hope you don't do that. Otherwise, you might end up with a broken heart, or even worse, in my opinion, an empty wallet. So yeah, before you trust somebody, right, the first thing that you need to do is you need to know something about that person. You need to know what that person is about. And the same thing applies to an API. You really need to understand that API before you use it. Again, sounds really simple, but a lot of people are missing out on this. Next, you should think about what data is being passed in and out of that API. Are you just dealing with marketing data, or are you dealing with secure customer information? Right? The answer to that will drastically change your approach. So yeah, you also shouldn't put the same amount of effort and time into every type of data, because that's just going to be a waste of your time, right? Not all data is equal. So let me give you an example. Let's say I am, filling up my car with gas. I don't really need to spend a ton of time into looking at the gas pump and observing it and gaining trust in this gas pump, right? I can generally assume that this gas pump is going to work and it's going to pump out gas. And if it doesn't, it's not that big of a deal because I could just go to another gas pump or I could just go to another gas station. If that doesn't work, it's not critical. You could just get gas somewhere else. But on the flip side, if I'm doing something like jumping out of a plane, I'm definitely gonna need to inspect that parachute. And I really need to trust that parachute before I jump because unlike filling up your car with gas, this is critical, right? This is life and death. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you should really think about your data and pick and choose your battles to see if it's worth the time and the effort into investing in that data. Because not all use cases are equal, right? Not all data is equal. Next, are you exposing the right amount of data or are you exposing too much data, more than what is required? That wouldn't be a good thing, right? Examples. If you're trying to buy a pair of shoes, do you really need to know my date of birth? If I'm trying to buy a pair of glasses, do you need all of my medical history? No, right? That's excess data. That's way too much. In the early days, a lot of companies were trying to just gather as much data as they possibly could and just hoard all this data, but that's not really the greatest thing to do. Sometimes less is actually more. So again, thinking about these questions, these simple questions is really, really important. So just take the time to really understand the API, understand the data, and trust will eventually come. Because whenever you're consuming an API, you're basically inheriting it, both the good and the bad of that API. So let me give you another example. Let's say you're using Twilio, programmable messaging. So basically, you're sending a text message with code. So if you're using this product, you should think about what data you're going to be texting. Think about the API. Think about what you're actually using with this API. So it might help to understand the actual technology behind an SMS, right? SMS is not end-to-end encrypted. SMS is just plain text. So you can't just send information over a text and expect it to be secure. Did you know that your cell phone carriers actually are storing your messages and they have access to all of that data? Furthermore, if you do something bad and you break the law, well, the police and the authorities are going to be able to potentially check your messages using surveillance systems. And if the police and if carriers can get a hold of that, guess who else can get a hold of that? Yeah, hackers, right? The point behind this is that you need to understand the technology before you actually use it, understand what data you're going to be using in and out of that API. So little tangent. If you're wondering how this whole situation works in the context of Twilio, well, we have a couple of features called message and number redaction, which basically means that after a message is transmitted, that data is not retained by Twilio. So if you're a financial company or a healthcare company, then it might help to enable these features. So yeah, the point of all of these analogies is to say that you should have a deep understanding and knowledge before you're using text, because you wouldn't want to send over a credit card number or a social security number over SMS if you knew all this background info, right? So who here has taken a COVID test and had to wait for your results? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm sure most of you have. So how did you get your results back? Some of you might have gotten a phone call with a doctor, telling you your results. Other people might have gotten an email with your results. But some services actually send you your results over text. But according to HIPAA, that is non-compliant. So you can't send a text message that says you're positive or negative because that is against HIPAA regulations. So how do some services and how do some companies deal with this? Well, you could either send a text that notifies you of your results, or you could send a link to like a secure portal that contains your results. So yeah, see, having an understanding and knowledge of all of this is really important. So understand what the API does, what data you're dealing with, and then the tech itself. Because how can you expect to gain trust if you don't have this background knowledge? Excuse me. So after you have some sort of baseline knowledge about the APIs that you're consuming, what can you look at in order to gain trust? Well, in my opinion, you could look at compliance. Now, compliance is not really going to give you trust in an API. It's just like telling you that that API adheres to a certain set of regulations. But I think there is value in looking at compliance, and I think it's a decent start. So let's say, for example, you want to use an API that is handling EU customer data. If you're doing that in that situation, you would obviously want that API to adhere to GDPR. So if you're not familiar with GDPR, it's a regulation that came into place in 2018, and basically it makes sure that companies handle EU user data the right way. Now, if you're dealing with an API that is handling credit card information, you're going to want to make sure that they're Pci Dss compliant. And if you're not familiar with that, it's just a standard that allows enterprises to handle credit card information. And then on the flip side, like if you're wanting to use an API that follows international standards for information security, you're going to want to make sure that they are ISO 27001 compliant. So yeah, there are tons of different types of compliances, and they all adhere to a different set of regulations. Now, I'm going to look at an example, Twilio, because I think that, I'm not just saying this because I work there, but I do think that we have a trusted API. And these are some of the certifications that Twilio follows. So Twilio is ISO 27001 compliant. We adhere to ISO 2017 and 18. We maintain SOC 2 compliance. We allow customers to enable FIPS level 3, which is a standard for cryptography. We also have a business associate addendum added to our terms of service, which basically shows that there's a shared responsibility between Twilio customers and Twilio itself whenever they're dealing with HIPAA regulations. Twilio Voice, for example, is PCI DSS level 1 compliant, so we can collect credit card information over the phone and or make a payment on the behalf of a customer in their applications. And we're also PCI level 3 merchant, so we can accept credit cards as a form of payment, but those credit cards do not enter our environment. And then finally, like a lot of companies, what they end up doing is they end up splitting like EU customer data and non-EU customer data due to GDPR, and a lot of times they treat EU data with more respect, I guess, or more standards than non-EU customers because of that regulation. But at Twilio, we don't do that. We apply the same high standards of GDPR to all customers and all personal data. So whenever you're building trust with a person, it's really important that you communicate frequently, making sure that you have the same set of boundaries and expectations. So if you're consuming an API, shouldn't that also apply? Right? You should frequently communicate with that API partner and be on the same page about expectations. And you can do this through adhering to SLAs and agreeing to their terms of service. So you should really think about applying the same rigor to enforcing uptime, performance, security, licensing terms, and product roadmaps as you do for traditional SaaS services when it comes to an API. Right? Why should you treat a traditional SaaS service differently than an API? So this is great and all, and so far we've been looking at things from a consumer perspective. So let's flip the coin and look at things for companies that are producing APIs. So what can those companies do to gain customer trust? Well, first off, you shouldn't just be looking at compliance and hitting those compliance goals. Of course, compliance is important, but also think about things from your customers' perspectives and really do what's best for the customer. Of course, regulation is important, but don't just stop there, right? Don't think of compliance as just checking one single box and then being done with it. Compliance is an ongoing thing, and it's never ending, and it's going to continue to grow. So at Twilio, we have this value called wearing the customer's shoes. And I believe that is a picture from our HQ, and I think there's actual shoes hanging there on the wall, just to remind us of this value. But I think that companies that are dealing with compliance should definitely adhere to this. You should wear your customer's shoes and just think about your customer at all times and do the right thing for your customers. Get back to the basics. If you're using authorization, use protocols like OAuth, maintain an inventory of your APIs, use a least privileged principle so that your entities only have the minimum function that's required, apply rate limiting to your APIs, and limit the sizes of your payloads. Get back to the basics. Now, here are some tips for organizations that are dealing with personal data. Now, I didn't come up with this analogy myself, but I thought it was a great analogy, and I wanted to pass it along. But think of handling personal data like handling radioactive material. So for example, if you're handling radioactive material and you have all these employees that are handling it, you don't want them to just keep moving it around all over the place from location to location, because the more they move it, the more they might spill it, the more they might drop it, and that would be a horrible thing. So the same thing applies to personal data. Don't just move it for the sake of it. Move it when necessary, because the more you move it, the more you increase the risks of data leaks. Also, think about how you're going to dispose of that material. You don't just throw away your radioactive material into a trash can or just any bin, right? That wouldn't be smart. You have to dispose of it correctly, and the same thing would apply to sensitive customer data. You have to dispose of it properly. Next, you shouldn't just stockpile as much radioactive material as you can and just try and build mountains of radioactive material. That sounds like a horrible idea. It's really hazardous, and I don't think companies should do that either. You should only collect the data that you actually need. You shouldn't over-collect. And then finally, you wouldn't really want any random person handling that radioactive material. You need a trained professional who knows what they're doing. I don't think you would want to trust me when it comes to handling that. I have no idea what I'd be doing. So yeah, have trained professionals handling personal data, and then if they don't know what they're doing, apply security training to employees on an annual basis or whatnot. Right, so the title of this talk was Gaining Trust in APIs and What You Can Look For. And unfortunately, if you were looking for a magic bullet that gives you one answer, that doesn't really exist. So sorry to disappoint you if you were looking for that. But it's important to note that even if you gain trust, trust does not equal security. So you should not inherently trust an API just because of its name recognition or what it's done in the past. You should always be cautious and on the lookout. Do your due diligence and follow a shift left mindset when it comes to security. So again, my name is Anthony. I'm a developer evangelist at Twilio, and I am by no means an expert in security, but I'm a developer who loves tech, and I love to talk about anything tech related. So I'd love to connect with you after this. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you. So we have we have time for one question from the audience. Yeah, here.
I like what you said about the merchant thing. Are you guys a payment gateway?
Are we a payment gateway?
Yes. So when you take credit card information, are you the thing that's going to process that credit card information? Is that what you are?
No, we're not going to process that at all. I think we're going to hand it off. I don't know the exact answer.
But you know what? You said exactly what I wanted you to say.
Yeah.
So you have all of this stuff going on your side, and you're going to hand it off to somebody else, and they're going to send it back to you. How do you know that they're just as locked up as you are? Because they're your weakest link.
Yeah.
And so you're all good, but they're not.
Yeah.
And so what are you guys doing for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that, I guess, would come into the whole trust aspect, right? We have to trust that service to handle those credit card payments. I honestly don't have an exact answer for you, but I could ask my colleagues, or I could get back to you later. Do what? Yeah, we're not.
Yeah, it's true. For example, the ISO 20001. You know, most of the time, all your suppliers need also to be certified at some point and everything. So it goes viral. But it's true that when you are an API that provides trust to others, how do you trust others? You know.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the question. Yeah,
it's a whole loop, and it just keeps on.
Yeah. This guy is doing an API rating agency there to David O'Neill there conducted a workshop yesterday about Tara, the API rating agency. Is like a way to, let's say, give more trustworthy, let's say, labels, let's say like that, to APIs, so to know which API we can trust. So there is something. So Twilio should be well graded at some point, right? Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'll rate you, right? I'll rate you. We have one short question coming, or are we good? Yeah, well, just one thing I wanted to share. Like the fact that you push personal data regulation into trust for APIs, like it's something quite new. I know Twilio is a consumer-first company, like a customer, let's say customer first and customer-oriented, but like I don't remember Jeff Lawson, but he said something around this. But like it seems, it goes with that path. The acquisition of segment, for example, you know, so it seems really going in that path.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, don't want to put you in a difficult situation above your payroll, right? But yeah, thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you
so much. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.